Vanchakalpatarubhascha kripasindhubhya cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shmate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namne Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shnivadi Paschatya Deshtarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. So, I didn't quite know exactly what the format was going to be in terms of whether I was going to be asked questions, but judging from the flyer, I'll just follow the flyer. But if you have any things that you'd like to ask me, of course, you can interject so that I can bring myself back to the topic. But starting with Krishnakalia, as we know, the Krishnakalia temple in Lotoka, Fiji, is one of the 108 temples that Srila Prabhupada set up in his manifest presence. And he had decided the name of the deity that was going to be installed at this temple, the first of now many temples. Fiji is known as having more temples, more Hare Krishna temples per head of population than any other country in the world. So we do have that as a as a very great plus point in Fiji. But I guess all of you may be aware that Kalia, the serpent Kalia, came to Fiji more than 5,000 years ago, and it is given very nicely in the Vedas, in the explanations of the acharyas as to what actually happened and how Kalia happened to actually come to Fiji. He was actually banished by Krishna, but because the Nagpatnis had Krishna, he was given the boon that he can go to a country where we'll have no competition, in the sense there will be nobody that will be able to challenge him in this place, and that the island would be free of any other type of poison and persons who would be poisonous towards him. And he would also be protected from Garuda, because he had Garuda as the person that he was very much afraid of. And so when he came to Fiji, Fiji is known as, in the Shastras, as Ramnik Dweep, as the Ramanaka Islands. And it's a group of 300 islands, 91 of whom are inhabited. And two of the major islands are called Viti Levu and Banawa Levu. And in Viti Levu, which is considered the island on which the capital of Fiji sits, Suva, Fiji. In the center, there's a mountain range called the Covandra Mountains, and there, in a cave, where Kalia actually has his lake inside the cave. And the local persons in Fiji, the indigenous of Fiji, call him Dengue, and he's their actual god. So they worship him. Of course, then the Christians came to Fiji, and so then Jesus became the worshipable person. But let's continue to worship Dengue, and Dengue is who Kalia is. So this is how actually Kalia came to Fiji, and that's the way to cite him. He is cited by the Fijians themselves, and they worship him every time he comes out of the cave. And they describe, some of them know what's happening in the cave, and they describe that the place in the cave where the lake is, where Kalia is a very, very beautiful place. It's very heavenly. Anybody who goes there doesn't want to come back again, because life is really wonderful there. Everybody is so very happy. It's an amazing place. It's, like I said, it's heaven. And so apparently people have made attempts to go there, and one of two things happen there. They stay back, or they come back, blinded and deaf, so they can't even explain what they saw, except they know they saw something amazing. So this is Kalia coming to Fiji. And then, of course, Srila Prabhupada coming to Fiji. It happened that he was traveling to New Zealand and Australia and coming back to the US. And so his flight happened to land at the airport, the international airport in Fiji, which is a very famous airport called Nandi International Airport. And it so happened that one of the richest businessmen in Fiji at the time, who has since passed away, but his name was Deoji Punja. He became famous Vasudev Prabhu, the GVC for. He at the time came to hear about Srila Prabhupada and became very, very amazed by him. And we know that these disciples were not ordinary. They were handpicked by Krishna to support Srila Prabhupada in his mission around the world. And so he actually met Srila Prabhupada. He took some food. His family was famous for making good food, by the way. Why he had 2 wives, he happened to have 2 wives, and they were very nice cooks. And so he himself was a connoisseur of food, And so he went to the airport to see Srila Prabhupada in the transit lounge, because Prabhupada would be in the transit lounge and then move on to his next destination. So when he met him there, he pleaded with Srila Prabhupada to please come back to Fiji and establish Krishna consciousness in Fiji. And Srila Prabhupada was very impressed by him. I had some nice prasadam that was given to him by Deoji Punja, and agreed to come to Fiji, and actually did come back to Fiji. And he met with him and met with some other personalities. We have this videotape of Prabhupada walking on the riverfront, the seafront in Lotoka, Fiji, which is where I was born also. It happened to be the place of my birth as well. And there are a number of people are walking with him, one of whom, his name was Desai. And he happened to actually take Prabhupada around places. He would be his, car driver, charioteer like that. And so told me some of the things that had happened at the time. And something else happened, which I'll describe later, that actually helped me a lot in my life. Anyway, so he agreed to preach in Fiji, and he stayed at the house of Deoji Punja. He stayed at the house of another of his younger brothers, who was Jagjivan Punja. Later on became the famous Jagannath Prabhu, temple president of Krishnakalia temple for the longest. And so there he started this program of Krishna consciousness in Fiji. He described this Krishnakalia as the time came that the temple was built. The first temple was built in Lotoka, Fiji. Decided that Krishnakalia needed Krishna dancing on Kalia, like that. And then the Nagpatnis around praying to Krishna for the audacity of their husband, how he dealt with the devotees, like that. And then on the left side of the altar were Gaur Nitai, 2 very beautiful deities of Lord Gauranga and Lord Nityananda, and then 2 wonderful deities of Srila Prabhupada and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And on the right side altar, he had very beautiful deities of Radha Govinda, with Lalita on one side and Vishaka on the other side, as the deities on the right altar. And the very small deities, Utsava deities of Shri Shri Radha Shyama Sundar. And so this is how the installation was done. The Prabhupada blessings, and he saw the photo of Krishnakalia. He has rolled down his eyes and said, actually, Krishna is Fiji. And he also said that Fiji had a good chance of being the first country to become Krishna conscious. Well, no one country has actually become fully Krishna conscious yet. But, let's see. The competition is on. Many countries are vying for that position to see that their country becomes the first country to be Krishna conscious. So let's see what happens. But this is how actually Srila Prabhupada came to Fiji and was very, very, very impressed by the people in Fiji. He felt very good about the people in Fiji, that they would be able to take on to this process. And of course, as you know, Srila Prabhupada wanted all of the peoples of the world to take to Krishna consciousness, because each and every one of us is a child of Krishna. And so he also wanted the local Fijians to do, which hasn't happened as yet so much, but I'm very confident with the continuation of the preaching, it will actually happen. And then, of course, Srila Prabhupada nominated nominated Vasudev Prabhu as the GBC for Fiji. And after Srila Prabhupada left, Vasudev Prabhu chose Tamal Krishna Maharaj, Srila Gurudev, as the next GBC for Fiji, as the guru who would come to Fiji and give shelter. And the reason he chose Srila Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, Srila Gurudev, was because he was very impressed with Gurudev. He felt like he had a very clear understanding of Krishna consciousness. He was Srila Prabhupada's right-hand man, and he would be able to actually preach in Fiji in a way that would impress people very well. And many, many people will take to Krishna consciousness, which is actually what happened. In Fiji at the time I became a devotee, Fiji already had 500 temples, Hindu temples in Fiji. And for the tiny island of Fiji, with barely 600,000 people as the total population, you can imagine having 500 temples in a country of 600,000. There's pretty much a temple in every street corner. That's what was happening in Fiji. So a lot of different ideas of Krishna, of God consciousness, Hinduism. There were different groups, the Sanatan Dharmis, and then there were other people, also the Arya Samajists and others who were preaching away. And Srila Gurudev came, and we all might remember the wonderful recording that Srila Gurudev had of God's competitors, that and the one in Suva, Fiji, where he spoke about Sai Baba, and so many people became very, very much more interested in Krishna consciousness after watching that tape. And even today, there are people who watch that tape and decide that, yes, I want to be Krishna conscious. This was the major effect that Srila Gurudev had. So then Srila Gurudev came to Fiji and he started preaching, and just amazing things happened. I remember when I first joined, which was way back in 1983 in Fiji, when Srila Gurudev would come, and this happened, of course, before he came as well, but I saw this happening when he came. Huge banners would be strung across the streets from the airport to Lotoka, welcoming Gurudev, saying, Jai Srila Gurudev, welcome. It's like, the welcome ceremony at the airport would be just amazing. There'd be people singing and dancing as Gurudev came out of the immigration area. And the locals were all just totally amazed. And they would, of course, sing and dance along with us. And it was really, really just very amazing. Gurudev had such a very, very powerful effect on everybody. And of course, we all know how charming he was. Gurudev, such a charming personality. Anybody who met him would not be anything less than impressed. I remember a wonderful occasion in which the Prime Minister of Fiji at the time was Ratu KKT S. Mara and Ratu KKT Mara. And he personally invited Srila Gurudev for a program where Ratu Mara spoke. And he had Srila Gurudev sit on a dais at his same position. Normally that doesn't happen. The Prime Minister is actually such an important person. And the Fijian custom, the local indigenous custom, is to give so much respect and reverence to the Prime Minister. It's pretty much like God, It's like that's his status. And yet he gave Gurudev the same status when he had him sitting next to him. And Gurudev had already spoken to him earlier because Ratumara wanted to know what the philosophy of Krishna consciousness was, what is the strategy. He himself was a Christian, and he didn't want conversion to happen in Fiji, where people would be converted away from Christianity to any other faith like that. So he spoke ahead of time, which Srila Gurudev wanted to be comfortable that when he said anything that he would be interpreted correctly, seen correctly, and that he would actually establish Christianity as the religion for the country and not have any threats in that direction. Now, we all know Srila Gurudev was very, very familiar with Krishna consciousness and knew exactly how to present Krishna consciousness, no matter what the time, place, and circumstance and people were that he was speaking to. And so he spoke very nicely. Gurudev spoke amazingly, so much so that the Prime Minister was so amazed that he became very, very happy with Gurudev and what he had said and spoken, and spoke very highly of Gurudev and spoke very highly of Krishna consciousness. And so this is like an example of Srila Gurudev's effect on people in Fiji. And later on, just as an aside, there was a movement that was coming into Fiji that was considered to be a movement that would pretty much take over Fiji. They were called the Rajneeshis, Osho, and their philosophy was that people can enjoy their senses to the hilt, and then at some point they get a little tired of enjoying their senses and turn to Rajneesh for science of self-realization, and he would tell them about how the soul is superior, this, that, and the other. And so that was their philosophy. But the practices were pretty much diametrically opposed to our practices, which our practices were about how, one became more disciplined in life. One gave up eating meat, fish, and eggs, and, intoxication, and had regulated principles like that. His was, there's no regulated principles, just enjoy yourself to the hilt. Whatever you like doing, just, there's no rules and regulations. Just do as much as you like of it. Just enjoy your senses to the hilt, like that. So Gurudev considered that to be very dangerous philosophy, and knowing the Fijians, meaning whether they were indigenous Fijians or Indians or any other race, he knew that the people of Fiji were very simple-hearted people. In Fiji, nobody says no to anything, pretty much. People are very much yes, would like to do things. They get along to one another, they trust one another a lot more than they do in most other countries. When I first came to the United States, I was shocked at the culture here. Here, the culture is a culture of no. I have to say no to you because I'm afraid you're going to in some way exploit me, take advantage of me like that. So I have to learn to say no in a nice way. That's not so much the culture of Fiji. So Gurudev was concerned. And so he asked me to speak to the Prime Minister. At the time, I did not have any personal contact with the Prime Minister, but, his philosophy was go and speak to the Secretary of the Prime Minister, and the Secretary will give you a way to get audience with the Prime Minister, and then you can tell him about why we should not let, Rajneesh come to Fiji like that. And, they'd already bought an island, by the way, in Fiji. They're on their way to becoming established in Fiji. And so I went and spoke to the Secretary. So amazingly, this is all Srila Gurudev's mercy. She asked me to wait for a moment. She went inside an office, came back out. Later on, I realized what had happened, that was the office of the Prime Minister. I didn't even know that was the office of the Prime Minister. I thought it was some office. I knew that this was the Prime Minister's office in the sense I was in the Prime Minister's office. I didn't know which room the Prime Minister himself sat in, because there were just multiple number of rooms. So I didn't know what room he went into, but apparently it was the office in which the Prime Minister sat. And so she came back and she said, the Prime Minister would like to see you now. And I was flustered because I didn't know what I was going to say to the Prime Minister. I hadn't prepared. I was thinking I'll try and convince the Secretary to allow me to have an audience with the Prime Minister and set me a date so I can speak. And then I'll go back to Srila Gurudev and say, now what should I say to the Prime Minister when I see him? But anyway, it just so happened that I had to walk in immediately and speak to him. But I told him candidly what I had been told by Gurudev. I didn't tell him that he told me. I just told him this was what was happening. And if he could help us, if he could advise us in this process, not to allow, any situation in Fiji that might bring spiritual harm to the Fiji Islanders. And of course, he himself was a very, very devout Christian. And so he didn't want any faith to come into Fiji that might disturb Christianity. So immediately accepted to help and said, I'd like you to go and meet the religious leaders, all the religious leaders in Fiji, and get them to sign a petition to say that they would like, for the government to step in and not allow a situation where there might be any harm that might befall the people of Fiji. And so that very day I went back and, I was from a business family, so I had a secretary also. I got a petition typed up, and then I went from, leader to leader amongst the Christians, the Muslims, the Hindus, the other groups that were there at the time, the Jains, like that, and spoke to them and said that this is what's happening. And amazingly, they all readily signed the petition, even though, I would have thought that they might have asked me to to edit the wording or anything like that. No, it's just whatever wording I used, they were okay with it. And they all signed. And I think it was less than 48 hours that I was back again in the Prime Minister's office with the petition. And he actually then, Parliament was to sit, I think the very next day, Parliament set the next day. And within 2 or 3 days of that, Parliament passed a law that would not allow the practice of this particular type of faith where you can do anything about that thing. So this is how Srila Gurudev was able to have this major effect on Fiji. And I think this is testament to Srila Gurudev's sincerity as a devotee, his advancement as a devotee, that he could move a whole government to do things based on, what he considered to be what would please Krishnakalia, what would please Krishna, what would please Srila Prabhupada, like that. And this is the effect that Srila Prabhupada Gurudev had on Fiji, and of course all of us who became his disciples, and even those who did not become his disciples. He was very, very effective in terms of winning their hearts over. Because, all of us
really unmuted.
Know that he's very charming in many ways, not just in terms of understanding of philosophy, but also in terms of his ability to be a great host, hospitable person, like a hospitality major, a connoisseur for food. I mean, how many devotees in Fiji became such wonderful cooks, and literally it was nectar coming out of their hands, food that they would cook and offer to the Lord, and the prasadam that we'd all eat, and everybody, and others would eat as well, and roll in ecstasy with prasadam, like that. And Gurudev would be personally there to see everybody not only ate to their full, but ate beyond their full. Literally, I remember some devotees coming from New Zealand and Australia one time. We were all sitting with Gurudev and taking prasadam, and they were like completely full. They loved the prasadam. They were just absolutely completely full. But the ladies would come around, men would come around, and give even more food on their plates. And even though they had their hands, to try and stop and put in there, find a way to put the food there. I remember one of the devotees making a fist at the Mataji and say, "I'll punch you if you put more food on my plate," like that. So, it's like, of course he was joking. But the fact is that, that was Gurudev's pleasure, that he'd like to see everyone well-fed, enjoying Krishna consciousness. He famously once said, I'd just become a devotee at the time, and the first day I went to meet him after I got initiated while we were in Suva. I was initiated in Lotoka, but when we went to Suva, first time I saw him after initiation in Suva was on Ekadasi, and so I went to Vasudeva Prabhu's house because there was going to be an Ekadasi program there, and I saw just a huge feast laid out, and everybody was eating when I got in. I said to Gurudev, I thought today was Ekadasi, isn't it? Fasting on Ekadasi? He says, yes. In ISKCON, he says, fasting means feasting. They had a great Ekadasi feast laid out for everybody. And, they really enjoyed prasadam so nicely, everybody. Just always rolling in ecstasy when Gurudev was around. Gurudev was very heavy with a lot of us, maybe all of us, in some way or another. And some of us were his favorite punching bags. But, when it came to these feasts and things like that, he was very, very charming. Everybody had a wonderful time, and he would say things that were, really, he would joke a lot and say a lot of nice things that made everybody laugh a lot, always in a very jolly mood like that. So Gurudev could go on extremes, be extremely jolly on one side, extremely strict on the other side, and, make us really try to crawl under a rock sometimes when he would chastise us and give us the sauce like that, which is very good for us, of course. It gave us good training, and today these things are coming in very handy in our administrative programs and dealing with other devotees like that. So, this is how Gurudev ended up in Fiji, in the sense that it was Vasudeva Prabhu invited him, and he graciously accepted. I remember some of the books that he wrote were actually also partly written while he was in Fiji, because I remember once going to a program. This was in a place called Navua, and there's a place out there that had a wonderful resort And at the resort, he would write, or at other times go out to the beach like that, spend time with us, the disciples. So we know that he really, really liked Fiji a lot. And of course, the whole of Fiji loved him very much also. Whenever it comes through the airports, the customs officials, no matter which race they belong to, always greeted him very nicely, gave him very nice treatment, never questioned him or anything like that. He really had a very, very good stay. Did very well. And so, of course, this wonderful temple, the Krishnakalia temple, was erected, and it so happened they built the temple right next to my house, the house I stayed in Fiji. It wasn't the house I was born in. It was the house that I was born in the mid-60s, early 60s. I was born in the 50s. And so I was a very young lad at the time, that house, when it first started. The Krishnakalia temple was built later on in the 70s. And so at that time, I just finished my studies and come back to Fiji and living in Fiji. And, the family worshiped Krishna also. The family worshiped Lord Shiva. But it so happened I became more like a Shivite. The rest of the family remained with Krishna. We've always been Krishna's devotees. Knowing my family tree going back 10 generations, we've always been Krishna's devotees. Everybody is named after Krishna. My father was also named after Krishna. His name was Raman. Raman is Krishna's name. His father's name was Vithala. Vithala is also Krishna's name. His father's name was Uddhava. Uddhava is also Krishna's name, like that. And so, like that, we go back all the way. It was all Krishna's devotees. But I somehow or the other became agnostic. While I was studying in New Zealand, I sort of didn't so much believe in God. I felt, who is God? We're God. And I'd read some things that were more impersonal. So I became more an agnostic rather than impersonalist. But when I came back to Fiji, there were some challenges in the businesses that we ran. I joined my father's business. And then because he became incapacitated because of a heart attack. And so I had to take over. My brother was in the business as well. And so at the time, I started worshiping Lord Shiva because, the impression is given that Lord Shiva is very, very kind. He's not as strict as Krishna, in that Shiva's devotees tend to be wealthy, Krishna's devotees tend to be not so wealthy, like that. So I took Lord Shiva's worship, and one of the biggest temples of Lord Shiva was in the next city called Nandi, where the airport was. And I would travel every day to Nandi to worship Lord Shiva at that temple. So that's how I became a Shivite. And I was worshiping Lord Shiva very sincerely and reading the Shiv Puran, which is about Lord Shiva, expressing him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, like that. Although he himself in the Shiv Puran very clearly says that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that the Bhagavad Gita is the essence of all books of knowledge, like that. And in another one of the texts that he has, he even describes Krishna as the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the one God that everybody should worship. The one book that everybody should study is the Bhagavad Gita. The one thing that everybody should do is engage in devotional service of Krishna, like chant Hare Krishna, like that. And so that's in the Gita Mahatmya, which is Lord Shiva speaking to his consort Parvati, like that. So, but I was reading about Lord Shiva, but there happened to be this one book, Bhagavad Gita, that was in our library and had been put there by this Hasmukh Desai that I spoke about earlier. Prabhupada was very happy with him and gave him a personally autographed Bhagavad Gita. At that time, it was the Macmillan version. You might remember it's a little larger Bhagavad Gita and had a soft cover, but a larger book. And so it personally, and so Hasmukh wanted me to be more favorable. And so when the Hare Krishnas built their temple next to our house, they became very successful. The number of people joining the movement just sort of exploded. So many people wanted to become devotees. So many people joined the movement. They were very happy to be, Krishna conscious, like that. And so, so what happened was that when they built this temple, because they were very successful, they wanted to expand. And it just so happened that we happened to be next door, and we had this wonderful building, 2-story building, with one level that was a higher story, the first floor, and then a ground floor, both complete houses, and really nice and large, very large. It was about a little over 4,000 square feet. And so very nice arrangement. It was pretty much as big as the temple in some ways. So the devotees decided that it was best if they could just buy us out and then expand the ashram on this side. So the women could stay in the temple building and the men could move over to this side, and then they could have more men and more women join them as full-time, devotees, ashramites like that, brahmacharis like that. So what they decided to do was they put some very loud speakers on our side of the house. And at 4:30 in the morning, when they did kirtan, they would really, and even before 4:30, they really bang these big whompers on the microphone, and it would create a real din. I mean, I would be like levitating on my bed, you know what I mean? It's like, that was how heavy the sound system was. Anyway, so, obviously we became very angry at them and decided that, we should do something about this, that, I'm going to stop this. But they were very popular, and so how to do it? In some ways, we were also popular. My father happened to be a very important political figure, and happened to be a person who was in the JC. JCs are considered very highly placed in Fiji, so because of that and the business we had, etc., and because they were in politics, my brother and my father in politics, my brother said, look, the simple way is let's just bomb the temple. Let's get a few devotees, they'll all run away from Fiji, we'll be okay. There'll be no problem. And I was from, a legal background, wasn't practicing law in Fiji, I was practicing in New Zealand. But then my father had a heart attack. I was asked to come and serve the family. And so I gave up that practice, came to Fiji, and became a businessman. So I told them, no, we can fight this legally. This is noise nuisance. And we had an engineer come in from New Zealand to record the sound level. And he confirmed that the sound level was above the human, level that was tolerable like that and would be clear noise nuisance. And based on that, we could actually evict them from that property, like that. So we decided to go to court. And, we're doing quite well in court. We won a few cases. It was going higher and higher. This was now in the Supreme Court in Fiji. And so this is the reason the family became inimical. In the early stages, the family signed up to become life members. So we were also life members of ISKCON at the time. But this incident made us inimical. And at the time, devotees were very transcendental. There was anything you can do for Krishna. It really didn't matter whether it met social norms or didn't, So, so you can imagine devotees were really in our face. They were doing things like stealing all our flowers from our gardens, They would come in early in the morning, steal all the flowers. And so, of course, that made us very angry, and things like that. So actually, this is the reason the family became inimical. And then, of course, there were others who became inimical because children were joining Hare Krishna, and the parents were not very happy with the children joining because, the philosophy was Krishna is most important and, family is not so important, that type of stuff. Early days we're a little more fanatical in our understanding of Krishna consciousness. And so so we had a good number of people supporting us against Hare Krishna. So we went to court and we were fighting the case in court. And I think we may have become successful. There was a real threat that we were going to become successful. But then I was worshiping Lord Shiva, as sincerely as I possibly could. And so one day, what had happened was that I was in Suva, which is the capital of Fiji, and we had a large office there. And so the manager in our office, who I'd hired to look after that office, happened to be the bishop of the Mormon church. And so he actually came one day to me and said, I'm just trying to see the time so that we have enough time. He said that, there's a nice religious program happening tonight. Would you like to come with me? And of course, I was spiritually inclined. I said, yeah, I'd love to come. Whose program is this? He said, it's the Hare Krishnas. And I said, you won't catch me dead in a Hare Krishna program. I'm not going to a Hare Krishna program. We swing the Hare Krishnas, trying to get them out of Fiji. And I'm going to go to a Hare Krishna program. That ain't happening. Never going to happen. But he kept coming back during the day. He said, I said, why do you really want to go and see the Hare Krishnas? Well, he said, I go to the villages in the weekends and I preach, about Christianity. And he said, the villagers tell me, when we ask questions, you say, just have faith many times. And the Hare Krishnas, they answer our questions and they have answers. You guys don't have answers. Why should we listen to you guys? The Hare Krishnas have better answers. So he said, I want to listen. What are they saying that's so attractive to these people in the villages? Like that. I said, well, you can go. I'm not going. So that evening I was having a shower at my aunt whose house I was staying at, which happened to be right above our office. It was their building that we were renting the go down and the office from, our warehouse from. And so she came and knocked on the bathroom door and said, your manager's on the phone. And so I thought, well, it must be something urgent. So I, turned the shower, put my towel on and went and spoke to the manager, said, no, we really should go to this program. And I said to him, look, I told you so many times not going. Now you're fired. You're no longer my manager. Come tomorrow and I'll pay you your paycheck and, we'll be done. You're no longer the manager at my place. You're not going to be a manager. I told you so many times, I'm not going to do this. I went back into the shower and I started showering again. But while I was having a shower, a thought occurred to me because Lord Shiva does say in the Shiva Puran that the purpose of life is to have a bona fide spiritual master who can show you the purpose of life, and then you can actually become liberated and move out of this world. And that the spiritual master could be from different, either gender, could be older than you, younger than you, like that. There's no material designation, including could be a friend or an enemy like that. So I thought to myself, well, he says it could be a friend or an enemy, and this is my enemy. So if I don't go to this program, I'm saying to Lord Shiva, that it can't be my enemy, right? It can't be my enemy. That is my spiritual master. So just for Lord Shiva's sake, I should really go to this program. So I actually called him back and I said, okay, don't worry, I'll come with you. We'll go. Let's go to this program. So we went to the program. It was the Suva Civic Center, which is a government center run by the city of Suva. And so, when I went there, people were a little scared because they knew I came from, I wasn't in politics, but came from a political family. And, in politics, people do kill people. They do things, nonsense things. I mean, I know of things that happen because of politics that, generally in most countries, things don't happen like that. But some countries get really wild. Fiji is one of them at the time. So they thought I'd come to attack him. So, the devotees started surrounding Gurudev. I didn't go up to the front as well. I just stayed right at the back. I wouldn't take my shoes off. I wasn't going to give anybody any respect. The people took shoes off and things like that. I didn't. I just sat with my shoes on and at the back on a chair. And I heard the class. And after the class, got up and left with this person. And I said, I don't have any problems with what they're saying. The only problem is they're saying Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And I know that Lord Shiva is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Krishna can't be the Supreme Person, He steals butter. He's a thief. How can he be God, He dances with other people's wives in the middle of the night. How can he be God? He doesn't even have morality. But to speak of Lord Shiva, is a very moral person. So he's the real Supreme Person. I'm okay. There's no problems. So, you can continue with your Christianity. You don't have a problem here. So anyway, that night I went to sleep. But early in the morning, just as I was about to get up, in a dream, Lord Shiva comes in the dream and says to him, that's your spiritual master. And boy, did I break out in a sweat. I literally, that bed got wet. I was sweating. I was thinking, oh my God, not happening. This is not happening. This is obviously a nightmare. You can have nightmares. You don't want something to happen. It happens in the night. It happens in a dream. So I think maybe this is not true. I just felt it can't be true. It's just a nightmare. Don't worry about it. It's just a nightmare. So, but then during the day, this thought came back, but maybe it was Lord Shiva, okay. Maybe it is him telling me this. So really, I should go back to one program and ask some questions this time, just to clarify. And so I went back. The next day was the medical school, the lecture theatre. And so at the end of the class, I asked him 2 questions. He answered those questions to my satisfaction. So I asked him if I could meet him in person. And he actually said, yes, you can come tomorrow morning and see me at this place. And you can speak to Nanda Kishore about it. At the time, Nanda Kishore was there. So I spoke to him and he said, yeah, if you come at 6 o'clock in the morning, then you can meet with Gurudev. So he asked me whether it might be too early in the morning. I said, you guys wake us up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I have no problem getting up early in the morning. So I'll be there at 6 o'clock in the morning. That's not an issue. Anyway, I was an early waker anyway. Yeah. In school, I used to wake up at 2 o'clock, do all my studies in the morning, like that before I went to class. So I had some dogs, some Alsatian dogs, and you had to walk them. That's the best time to walk them also. So anyway, I went there at 6 in the morning, and, they seemed to be, I didn't know what chanting was at that time so much. And their hands would be there mumbling away, and some people shaking their head and going like this, like that. And I thought, I already thought that they were crazy anyway, so it wasn't like anything new to me. I thought, well, this is what it is. Let's just see. I've got to meet with gurudev, with this Krishna Guru Swine person, and we'll see what happens. Like an hour later, this is still going on. I'm thinking, wow, 1 hour, he's still not here. So I just thought, well, this is just a typical Hare Krishnas. This is how they deal with people. So, I have nothing to worry about. He's not going to be my spiritual master. Anyway, 7 o'clock, suddenly the curtains open. Everybody dives on the ground. There's some song that starts. Everybody starts singing. I have no idea what's happening. I'm just witnessing this. And then suddenly somebody starts doing puja. And there's this, person sitting. This was Prabhupada sitting on a deity form. I didn't know that Prabhupada anything. I had no idea what Hare Krishna is all about. So anyway, they started worshiping him, and I'm thinking to myself, man, they're just holding me back. And then they sat down, they started reading from this book. That was their Bhagavatam class. So I got really irate. So about 8:30 or something, I just felt like 2.5 hours. I haven't seen, the Swami. So I just got up and I started leaving. So one of the devotees chased after me and said, no. He says, Krishna Maharaj really wants to see you. Gurudev wants to see you. Please, we have to go to another place because he didn't come. I said, well, you guys could have told me that earlier. Why did you make me wait like this? In my mind, I'm thinking they were trying to brainwash me, so that, I would be okay when I met with Gurudev. Anyway, so they said, well, just, come with us. I said, no, I'm not sitting in a car with you. I'll go in my car. I'll follow you. Thinking to myself that if I had to do a getaway, then I'll have my own car, just get away from there. I'm going to go with these guys. So anyway, we went to this place. It happened to be the place where Vasudev Prabhu was staying. So they asked me to wait in the sitting room, and I said, no, I'm not waiting, another 2.5 hours. So I got up and started leaving. And so they just walked me right into the room where Gurudev was sitting. And he was sitting there, and he had his hand in the bead bag. And of course, he was chanting. I didn't know he was chanting. And he beckoned me to sit on a chair, and I said, no, I'll sit on the ground. But he insisted, and finally I sat on the chair, opposite him like that. And for a good 20 minutes, he just kept very, softly chanting. I thought he was mumbling something. I didn't know what he was mumbling. I had no idea. And at the time, I had read some books from a person called Ramana Maharshi, and he says, when you meet a sadhu, you can speak heart to heart. And I thought, maybe he's speaking heart to heart, but my heart's not speaking here at all. I don't know what's happening, But for a good 20 minutes, there was this silence. And it was real 20 minutes. I remember one of my godbrothers asking Gurudev, said, Nityananda said, for 20 minutes you didn't say anything, and there was complete silence. And, is that true? And Gurudev said, yes. I thought it was 30 minutes. Anyway, so after that, the first thing he said to me, he said, so you're a good businessman, and I know I've heard a lot of nice things about you. So because you're a good businessman, why don't you give me a piece of paper with a pencil? And he said, why don't you write out your schedule, a typical daily schedule as a businessman? So I took it and I wrote down, I wake up at this time, I go swimming at 5 o'clock in the morning, I come back and do this, that, and the other, and I have the whole day down. I was trained at university because I went through what they call business studies and learned how to be a businessman, this, that, and the other, things like that, so marketing, etc. So I wrote down my schedule, gave it to him, he turned it around, wrote something, gave it back to me. And I looked at the other side, the schedule was exactly the same, except he changed my swimming time from 5 o'clock in the morning to noon. So I asked him, why did you change my swimming time? He said, if you swim at 5 o'clock in the morning, you're already rested. You really don't need that swimming at that time. But if you swim at 12 o'clock, you'll become refreshed and you'll become doubly energized in the afternoon and your profits will double. And I said, oh my God, this is the first time I heard Hare Krishna say something that sounded to me like makes sense, I mean, before that it was like, man, these crazy Hare Krishnas, Anyway, so I became impressed with that. I thought, wow, he could tell I was impressed, I didn't say anything to him after that, he said, anyway, he said, I want to challenge you. I know we're in court and, I'd like to offer you a challenge. If you win the challenge, we'll leave Fiji. And if you lose the challenge, you better put a full-page ad in the newspaper and apologize to us and withdraw your case. So I said, okay. And, I've been trained in the Fiji military, and challenges for me was business challenges anyway. It's all challenges anyway. Good businessman answers challenges and does well at it and makes a lot of money out of resolving challenges. That's what a good businessman does anyway. So, today I train businessmen and I tell businessmen have criticism for breakfast. That's, you should breakfast like a prince, but in your case, you should breakfast on criticism. That makes you a good businessman, like that. So anyway, so I said, okay, so what's the challenge? So he said, well, first of all, he says, I want you to read 4 books. I'm going to give you 4 books and I want you to read them. And I said, I don't mind reading those books, except, when I went to university, I promised myself I'll never read any more books because, in law, they make you read books that are like 10 feet, 12 feet high from the floor. It's like so many books to read. I was like tired of reading books, Anyway, so I said, okay, I'll do that. And he said, well, he says, the thing is, I'd like you to read them for 1.5 hours every day. And I said, what? 1.5 hours every day? That's a lot of reading, I can do a lot in 1.5 hours. I'm sorry. But he said, no, well, that's a challenge. If you don't accept the challenge, then, that's it. And I wanted to accept the challenge because I wanted to defeat the Hare Krishnas, I thought this was Lord Shiva's way of me helping defeat Hare Krishnas, So I was in the mood. We're going to win here, this guy's going to lose this battle. Because in the end, I have to say I'm convinced, right? So the ball's in my court to say I'm convinced and not convinced. You see what I'm saying? So anyway, so I said, okay. He said, what's the other thing that I have to do? He says, well, he took out his beads from his bead bag and he said, I want you to chant Hare Krishna. I said, what's that? And so he chanted Hare Krishna in front of me and rolled the beads. He said, this is how you chant. I said, okay. And he said, I want you to chant 4 rounds a day. And I said, and how long will that take? He said, well, it should take you anywhere between 30 to 40 minutes. I said, what? 40 minutes? Already 1.5 hours gone. Now another 40 minutes of chanting. that's a lot of work, And he said, well, that's the challenge. I said, okay, I'll do that too. What's the third challenge? He said, the third challenge is when you in Lotoka, every time you're in Lotoka, your temple is next door on Sundays, I want you to go and peel potatoes at the temple for the Sunday Feast program. I said, what's the Sunday Feast program? So he explained the Sunday Feast program. And he said, we serve food and we make potato curry and this, that, and the other. Fiji potato curry was like a famous thing. And said, I want you to peel the potatoes. I said, no problem. He was surprised. He said, what? You're okay peeling potatoes? I said, yeah. When I went to military training, the first time I remember I tried to escape camp, they gave me a mountain of potatoes to peel. I become an expert potato peeler, what I mean? So it's like, I can peel potatoes. That's not a problem at all. I'll do it in 10 minutes. It'll be done. What I mean? The potatoes will be done. They'll be peeled. So he said, okay, that's good. So he said, and then what's the fourth challenge? Well, the fourth challenge is in the weekends, he said, the temple president and his group, they go out to the villages and they preach. And sometimes they'll take you and you have to go and help with the preaching. And then you do what they tell you to do. And I said, no, that I'm not going to do. Because, my temple president might tell me, you leave your wife. I'm going to leave my wife. Because at that time, this is what we thought about the Hare Krishnas, That if you join Hare Krishna, you might have to leave your wife, you might leave your children, and become fully dedicated to Krishna, I said, I'm not doing that. Thank you very much. I'm not leaving my wife. I had a son at that time already. So he said, no, anything like that happens, you can talk to me about it. It will be reasonable. Nothing like that will happen. So he said, you accept the challenge? I said, yeah. He said, but there's one more thing. I said, what's that? You have to do this for 3 months. And I said, no problem. I'll do it for 6 months. He said, no, 3 months. I said, no, 6 months. I'll do it for 6 months. I'm okay. In my heart, I'm thinking, I'll defeat you guys. And 6 months later, you guys are gone, right? I'm happy. You happy, everybody happy. Let's do this. And so then I went back to Lotoka, and then, at the time, Jagannath who was the president, he met me, and he gave me the books, and he gave me the chanting bead bag, and it happened to be a Sunday. So he asked me, I told him I had to peel potatoes. He said, no, you're a big businessman, you're a vice president of the Fiji Chamber of Commerce Industry. I had high positions with government circles, things like that, You're not going to peel potatoes. Our congregation will feel, how can you make him peel potatoes? Ask his servants to do it. We had servants in our houses, that type of stuff. So anyway, So I said, no, it's a chance. I'll do it. I'll peel the potatoes, So he took me to the place where the potatoes were being peeled. And, the four guys who were peeling the potatoes, I told them to put your things down. I'll do it myself. And their jaws were dropping in the way I was peeling the potatoes. I said, wow, this is a boss? And he peels potatoes like this. I mean, like that. They were very happy. Anyway, so then he asked me to take some prasadam with it, cook some prasadam, take some prasadam. I did that. And I asked him how much the books and the bead bag cost, and he said nothing. And I said, no, I don't take charity like that. Wrote him a check more than the value and gave it to him. And then, I went back home and I started reading. I didn't come to the temple so much; just I'd read and I would chant. Then next Sunday when I came back, the temple president asked me this time, "I want you to come tomorrow morning to the program." To the early morning program. And I said, okay, I'll do that. Check it out. So I went to the program, and after the darshan program, he told me the day before at the Sunday feast, he said, I want you to give Bhagavatam class tomorrow. I said, what's that? And he said, we'll be reading from this book, and you just read it and tell us what you think, what are your realizations from what you're reading. And I said, I can do that. I've come from an attorney background. I mean, I can read, and I can tell you what I think about it. At that time, I was a very cocky person anyway, so it was okay for me to say something like that. I had no idea what a Bhagavatam class was anyway. I thought I had to read and tell people what I thought was written in the book. So then the Bhagavatam class came, so he gave me the book, and I started reading. He said, no, not like this. And so we have to sing first. And so he trained me how to do a Bhagavatam class, that morning. And that's how I started Bhagavatam classes. But, at that time, Hare Krishna, these are the type of things that would happen, And then we went to the villages, and, sometimes villages would not have a job, and we had a business, so I'd give them a job at our work, and so people were happy, and I started enjoying it. But the thing that actually impressed me the most was the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. For some reason, when I chanted, I felt very good. Earlier on, when I was a Shivite, there was a time when I actually even decided maybe I should commit suicide. I had problems, I felt like something missing in life. Life was not worth living, even though I was from a good business family and everything, just not feeling good about myself. In terms of living. But this, on the other hand, was giving me ecstasy, And so after a month of that, I realized that this process works. Everything Prabhupada says in the books are right. The Hare Krishna mantra works. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So I actually wrote to Gurudev and said to him, please accept me as your disciple. I surrender. You're right. I'm wrong. Please accept me as your disciple. He called me. He was in Hawaii at the time. He called me. And he said, I'll come back to Fiji and I'll initiate you. He said, I'll do that. And so that's how I decided to become a Hare Krishna. So then I told my father about it. And he said, well, I'll give you 48 hours to get out of the house. You're no longer my son. He was dead against Hare Krishnas anyway. He said, this is all nonsense. They brainwashed you and I'm losing a son here. But anyway, I'd rather not have you now. You and your wife and your son can leave. So then I went and spoke to my mother, and my mother held my hand and said, now you've held Krishna's hand, don't let go. She said, I want you to know something. She says, every morning I make a flower garland there's some very important flowers that are growing in our garden called Parijata flowers. And she said, I make a garland from Parijata flowers and I sneak it over the fence for Krishnakalia. Every day Krishnakalia wears these flowers. I said, wow, that's very nice of you. I didn't know that. My mother was doing that. These guys were stealing flowers. My mother would keep some of the flowers just to make these. Anyway, so she was favorable. So I thought, okay. So the third day is when I was to leave the family. The second day, an idea came to me that why don't we meet your spiritual master, I said to my father. And he was living in another city, which was on the other side of Lotoka. On one side was Nandi, and the other side. The north was Ba, and the south was Nandi, or little westish Nandi, and more northeastish Ba. So there, his spiritual master was in the Ramakrishna mission. I knew him. I liked him a lot. I think he liked me too. And so, we went there the next morning, and we arrived at 6 o'clock in the morning. It was 9 o'clock in the morning. We arrived at 9 o'clock in the morning, and we started talking about this. And I was telling him what I wanted to do, and my father said, why, what? He was right, I was right. We sort of started talking to one another. And this conversation went on till 6 in the evening, nonstop. No, there's no drinking water, no eating food, nothing. It was like intense discussion that I should join Hare Krishna. Please give me the blessings. On the other side, my father saying, no, he should not join Hare Krishna. It's the wrong thing to do. And so arguments on both sides. And at Then when I looked at my watch, I said, "Wow, it's 6 o'clock in the evening, man. We started at 9 and 9 hours of talking." I said to his spiritual master, "Please, you have to decide now. This is never going to stop. You have to decide." So he said, "Okay, I will." So he went into his meditation room, and after half an hour, he came back and told my father, he said, "Actually, if you want to be happy, if your family wants to be happy, let him become a Hare Krishna. You give him your blessing. So I'm giving him my blessing, and you give him your blessing too." So my father said, "I'll give him a blessing on one condition." He said, "What's that?" He said, "I'm not going to the Hare Krishna temple myself." So I wanted, of course, my whole family to come for the initiation ceremony. So I said to my father, "But you will let everybody else come, right?" And he said, "Yeah, I'll let them come, but I won't be coming to the ceremony." I said, "Okay." I didn't want him to feel. And as we were going, I thought, let me just see the meditation. I told my father, "This 1 minute." I went back in and I went to the meditation room where he was meditating. And as I opened the door, what do I see? I see a huge mural of Srila Prabhupada sitting chanting Hare Krishna. And I thought, what? This is the Ramakrishna mission. This is a huge painting of Prabhupada sitting. It's a very famous painting in our movement. Prabhupada sitting on the lawn and he's chanting Hare Krishna, looking up like that, like this. And so I went to his spiritual master, whose name was Bhaskar Nair. I said, "Swamiji," I said, "That's Prabhupada." He says, "I know." He said, "Don't tell your father." I said, "No, I won't tell him." He said, "Actually, I read all of Prabhupada's books. What he says is right." He says, "Actually, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but I can't say that." So he said, "You have my blessings. You're doing the right thing. Go right ahead." So I didn't tell my father, and he left his body, of course, maybe about 5-6 years ago, but I never told him that this had happened, So I was afraid that he might say, "Well, the deal's over," or something, But that's how I ended up becoming a Hare Krishna. And so, because of that, I do understand that the people don't like Hare Krishnas for various reasons. And I appreciate that because I myself was very much anti-Hare Krishna. And so I just understand that it's up to Krishna. If we are going to be a devotee, it's up to him, and it's up to his devotee. And so by the blessings of the devotees there in Fiji, and especially, of course, Srila Gurudev, and of course, Srila Prabhupada, who was there in that meditation room, and of course, Krishnakalia himself and all the deities, somehow they allowed me to become a Hare Krishna, and that's how I ended up becoming a Hare Krishna. And then we lost everything because of politics and things like that happened. And then I was asked to come to the US, and that's how I ended up in Dallas in 1993. And had some nice intrigue after that too, got kicked out of the temple. I told them I can't come back for 3 years. I added 2 years to it, made it 5 years. And I never thought I'd come back to Dallas, but Gurudev wanted me to come back. And I remember he called me to Houston to talk about preaching. And we went to Sarvabhauma Prabhu's and Guru Bhakti Prabhu's house. And I remember walking through the door, and Gurudev was sitting there, and some of the disciples were sitting there, and Gurudev said, "Here comes the next temple president of Dallas." And I paid my obeisance, and I got up and I said, "No, Gurudev, I'm not becoming temple president." You know what I mean? It's just a very tough position. Not Dallas anyway, let's put it this way. And so he got very angry, and he just told me, "Well, that's the door, and you're no longer my disciple. You're a free man. You can do whatever you like." I could tell he was trembling with rage. So I said, "Okay, Gurudev, we'll talk more about it when you get back to Dallas. I'll do what you tell me to do, but, please." So when we went back to Dallas, we had to talk about it. And I said, "Gurudev, actually, you should make, Mathuranath Prabhu the temple president. You can make Durashaya Prabhu the temple president. You've got Rupanuga Prabhu. These are all very nice devotees. They'll be much better as a temple president. You make me the vice president, and I'll do all the work, and they just be the temple president." I said, "No, you're going to be the temple president." And then he pointed at his hand and he said, "You see this hand?" He says, "It's all white. Inside, I'm all brown." He says, "You outside, you're brown. Inside, you're all white." I said, "What does this have that got to do with being a temple president?" Thinking in my mind, we're going to have all these amazing answers he'd come up with, and you just get blown away by them. You can't do anything about it. He said, because he says, "I think the non-Indian devotees will be okay with you. You work well with non-Indians, and Indians will be okay because you're Indian. So you'll be able to bridge that." And at that time, some Indians were thinking that, they'd like to take over the temple and run the temple. And of course, that wasn't Srila Prabhupada's idea. Prabhupada was, let the locals, run the show type of stuff. Anyway, long story short, that was that part. And now there are more temples in Fiji. They're doing well. All temples have challenges all over the world. No temple can say we don't. The bigger we become, the more issues we'll have. But these are all Krishna putting us through training so we become better as devotees and become more sincere as devotees and become more accepting and attracting to others so they can become devotees. And I think that's what's happening in Fiji as well. Things are working out well. The country is doing well. Of course, right now it's going through the ravages of COVID-19. But generally speaking, the country has been doing quite well. So hopefully I answered everything that I was asked to speak about. But please ask me any questions. And of course,
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, this is Nimai Sundari. I would love to say that your presentation is very, very, very pleasing and heartening, and I have thoroughly enjoyed every moment of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Prabhu, I have a challenge for you.
Yes, Prabhu.
I want you to accept this challenge. It's such a wonderful story, and I'd like you to ask the senior devotees that Gurudev chose to guide his disciples if you should write about how you became a devotee, because I think that it's a very wonderful story, and a personal story like that can actually transform other people that have doubts or barriers to surrendering to God. Like Radhanath Swami was coaxed to write a book about, some of his life. And I wonder if you will accept that challenge of asking these senior devotees if you should write, because I think out of humility you might not want to write.
Right.
But I feel that it's a very wonderful story, and will you accept that challenge?
Yeah, in 1992, Gurudev had asked me to write himself, He has actually asked me to do that.
Oh.
And at the time, I was very hesitant and I maintained my hesitation. But no, I think you're right. I should speak to the other Maharajas and say, what is the right thing for me to do here rather than decide myself this is the right thing to do, to just say things, don't write things down. Because I really don't want to promote myself in any way. It's like Gurudev is really the person I want to promote as much as possible, and Prabhupada, of course. Since you say that, and you are definitely a representative of my spiritual master, he loved you so much. You were his secretary for so long, and you served him very intimately. So I will take this as speaking through you, Gurudev, telling me that go and speak to the representatives, your senior advisors. There are 4 senior advisors, as we call them, spiritual advisors of Texas. So yes, I'll speak to them and ask them what they think. And if they say it, then I'll start pinning it down,
I'm not sure what they'll say, but I just an idea, and I feel that it would be valuable.
Thank you, Guru. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Haribo, Krishna Kripa here. I already told you to write a book and you did, so I'm not getting involved in that. But I just wanted to compliment you that I've been married for like 35 years to one of your god sisters from Fiji, and I have never heard this entire story. Neither has she. So thank you very much for making everything so wonderfully entertaining. Very, very great pleasure. You should, it's very happy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Coming from a great devotee like you, that's a real compliment. But the compliment really belongs to Gurudev, Because obviously you might say my friends even say today, those friends I had from that time, that he's a wolf in sheep's clothing. He's gone inside to destroy Hare Krishna from the inside. He couldn't do it from the outside, so he's going to do it from the inside. That's why he's inside Hare Krishna right now. They still don't believe that I'm really genuine devotee. I know I'm not anyway, but they think that one day he's going to do something and it's going to be a real problem for the movement. And then, we'll all know that, yes, this guy really hated Hare Krishnas. They can't believe that changed. And I can't believe it myself. I think the only reason I changed is because of the blessing of the devotees, Gurudev, Prabhupada and Krishna himself, Radharani, like that, Guru Nityananda. So this is what's happened. But really, other than that, there's no chance I would be a devotee in this life. If you know my past, you'll know some of the things I did in my past. There's no question that I was not only a demon, I'd be like probably the king of demons if the demons were identified, like that. So, Sri Rupa Prabhu, we got through this without any difficulties on the in the internet. So that's amazing.
Very fortunate. I'm very happy because listening to you speak about your experience was so sweet. I've gotten so many comments in the chat about devotees that are just appreciating it. Your sweetness and just the emotion that you've showed and the honesty is just. Like Sarvabhauma Prabhu said, it's something that would be so beneficial to so many. So we would love it if you would consider writing a book.
Thank you.
Your experiences and your insights and your realizations. It was such a special class. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you.
If anybody has any questions or comments or appreciations that they would like to share, we've already had so many, but if anybody else would like to unmute, please feel free to do so.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Have my humble obeisances unto your lotus feet. Here, Prabhu, Hare Krishna. It's wonderful, very nice to hear that. How you came up from like a roller coaster, It's really nice to hear this pastime of your, how you come in contact with devotees and you change from negative, and you're serving a temple in Dallas so nicely from 93, right?
5 years,
you are president. Yeah. And like you have, there is a long time Gurukul and restaurant is so successful, and because of your guidance and you are a success president, I can say, wonderfully you operate everything.
The heart of the devotees, I would say.
Whenever we come for Dallas Rath Yatra, we see, how much all your team and all the devotees are putting so much effort, to organize that Rath Yatra, so big Rath Yatra, and that's amazing, and very nicely you operated that whole project every time. So thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna, very wonderful.
Thank you. I'll accept that on behalf of the spiritual master. He's really, he's still here with us, and guiding us and helping us along despite all our shortcomings like that. So nice. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Can you hear me?
Yes, very clearly.
Hi, Prabhu. Our glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hi.
Thank you for your services. A question is, did Prabhupada say that Fiji would become the first Krishna conscious country? Is that still in process?
Yes, that's still in process. He did say that. I think he also said that some other countries as well. Wasn't that they said that about? I've heard other countries telling us that they also said that about the Mauritius, for example. I think there was another one more other country. I cannot remember which one it was. But these three countries I've heard that did say the same thing to them, that you have the chance to be the first Krishna conscious country in the world like that. But Fiji was definitely one of them. And it is in process. It's hard to say what will happen or not happen because I think it's really in Krishna's hands anyway. But there are devotees in Fiji very sincerely preaching away. And, there's a good chance that a sudden shift can happen that can suddenly find the situation where everybody starts taking to Krishna consciousness very nicely in Fiji. A lot of people are already taking to Krishna consciousness. So it's just a matter of time. But I think it's a matter of time for the whole world to take to Krishna consciousness. Things are moving quite well. Knowing what I know from the vantage point that I have serving inside Hare Krishna, I can honestly say that the movement is doing very well, but has some very, very big challenges that it needs to cross over, and for good reason, so that we can become well-placed to serve people who come to the movement. At the current time, we do have some weaknesses that really need to be taken care of. And so those things are being worked on and more things will come up. But yes, I would say the process is on.
And thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Is it my turn? Who's Haribol? I want to thank you so much because I really like you a lot. I think your name is perfect because you're so merciful and like you speak very nicely and you're very sophisticated. So I really appreciate your qualities. I hope I can imbibe some of those qualities. And you mentioned about how we have a lot of challenges in our movement and a lot of weaknesses. Giriraj Swami asked Srila Prabhupada, how will this movement go on when you're not physically here? Yes. And Srila Prabhupada said by intelligence and organization.
Very true.
And so Gurudev was really big on organization. He was organized like anything, he was such a perfect organizer.
Oh, yes.
And Giriraj Swami said that he could go to him. He's his only God brother. He can go to him for anything. He knew everything actually. Yes, any topic he can handle it. So I mean, I don't know. I miss Gurudev a lot, but I listen to his lectures every day, and yeah, I don't miss him in the sense that I miss his physical presence, but I think that I don't know. I get upset big time. I don't know. I'm just when I see we can't do little things, like we can't do little things, right? Yeah. And we're supposed to save the world. Prabhupada wanted this moon to save the world, right? We can't do basic things. Not me. I don't know. There's a lot of devotees have no common sense, and it bothers me big time, And I get angry, then I get accused of being offensive, And there's no compassion either. There's no compassion. There's a lot of talk over here. A lot of talk, but they don't walk the walk, man. So I don't know. I like you a lot, but hey, this is how I feel in my heart right now. So if I'm offensive, if I was offensive, sorry about that, but that's how I feel. I feel people just talk a lot, but they don't dare. There's no action over here,
Yes, we have to speak up. This is the right thing to do.
There should be I heard that this. Who is it? Rasikant, my good friend. He said that this I said, what does Ishtagosti mean? He said it means heartfelt expression. But here, there's no way to express your heart. I mean, basically, you can't even speak your mind nowadays. People get Haribol. Thank you, Haribol.
You write about organization. You also write about intelligence. I mean, Gurudev was very intelligent. He was way ahead of his time in all the things he did. I remember when he left, another devotee who is also a very, very good devotee, very, very powerful leader in our movement. His name is Jayapataka Maharaj. He told me when I went to Mayapur after Gurudev left his body, I'm in a sense his son-in-law because his disciple is the father of my wife. So I'm the son-in-law of one of his disciples. So he calls me son-in-law as well. And so anyway, so he told me, he said, the movement's never going to be the same. Now that Krishna Maharaj has left, it's never going to be the same. And so it's actually true. We are missing him. Even now, some of the big things that we're trying to deal with, people do say that quite a number of times. Not often, but quite a number of times. That if Krishna Maharaj had been here, he would have sorted this out by now. So that type of thing. So you're right. Absolutely right. Somebody else was saying something, I think.
Yes, Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, very clearly, Prabhu.
Yes, Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I'm Amalanam Das, Dandat Pranam, all best to Srila Prabhupada. I just wanted to share my appreciation for you with the group. So I have just have a opportunity to meet you in person maybe twice. The first time was when I was volunteering to give you a ride from the airport for the temple president's meeting maybe 2-3 years ago. We had stopped at Whole Foods along the way. What I remember is that I told you that from the first time I understood the philosophy and accepted it, to actually starting to come to the temple regularly, almost 15 years had passed. So it was kind of a waste of my life for that time. Your immediate reaction was, oh, Srila Prabhupada also, there was many years between when his spiritual master told him and he acted on it. And I remember that. I was stunned by your compassion.
Thank you.
So I'm not even equal to the dust of Srila Prabhupada's feet, and you're kind of giving an analogy saying even he did that. So it has struck in my heart, and it's also important that I think all of us should be that compassionate. It is very, very inspiring.
You are a grand disciple of Srila Prabhupada, so you're his grandson, and so obviously if I praise the grandson, the grandfather becomes very happy with me. So I have my selfish reasons also. But anyway, it is true that, for some of us, it takes a little while. And then it's all dependent on Krishna's will. So at the right time, but you already, the first time like you first came in contact, you became affected by it, It was just a matter of time that it manifested externally. But internally, all of us get affected immediately. Actually, there's a very nice story about that, how we all become affected internally. It's just a matter of manifestation takes a little while longer, external manifestation takes a little longer. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Thank you very much for everything you've done for me as well. You've helped me a lot in my life. I really appreciate that.
Thank you again, Prabhu. This was wonderful. We hope to hear from you again sometime soon. And we hope to hear, when we hear back from you, that you have news about possibly starting your book.
Yeah. Actually, I am writing a book. I've written 3 now. And but they're going through a process of final, the writing it down so that we can then send it to the editors. And then, started with 1 book. We ended up with 3 because we wanted to continue the story. It's a story, actually, of 2 college students. And through the life of the college students, not through the life, but through the experience of the college students over 2 years, the philosophy is explained from a metaphysical level to a spiritual level to a transcendental level. That's why there are 3 books. And so what happens in each of those levels and what the experiences are of the personalities as they're going through that pathway, and ultimately reaching the lotus feet of Gauranga Mahaprabhu and having darshan of Gauranga Mahaprabhu, which is what Srila Prabhupada said, what he determined after he met his spiritual master that I will see Krishna face to face. So for us, seeing Gauranga Mahaprabhu face to face is really the purpose of our life, so that everything will become clear to us and obvious to us once we have the darshan of Gauranga Mahaprabhu. We're already having darshan at some level, but the idea is to deepen that darshan to a full level. So that's the book sort of follows that. It's called the Gora frequency, the frequency of Gora, And so by the Gora frequency, a person can come to the highest station in their life and become fully satisfied with what is described as suprasidhiti in the Bhagavatam, like that. So I'm hoping the book will be ready for print around November or December of this year.
That sounds so exciting.
And,
actually, back around that time then to speak about the book when it's ready.
Yeah. And the good thing is now I've got some movie makers interested so that they can make a movie out of it too. Because the movie is better than a book. People understand things when they see it in action rather than, just read something. And actually another group has decided to use it for a video game, play video game and sort of go up the ladder up to the highest point and win some points on the way and learn Krishna consciousness as you're going, that type of thing. So, and again, this is all because of Gurudev's request for me to do that. And I asked Giriraj Maharaj and he said, yeah, you should do that. And so that's because Giriraj Maharaj is really the one who spends the most time in Dallas. Of course, Gurudeva Maharaj is also there, but he tends to defer to Giriraj Maharaj when it comes to topics like this. And so, why don't you, he's an author, why don't you talk to him, that type of stuff. And so I got that approval and so I decided to do this.
Oh, congratulations. It's
not about me. The book is nothing about me in it. It's just about Krishna.
So many people, and so many people will hear about Krishna, so that's wonderful.
That's the best thing to do, actually.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you also very much.
We just have some announcements. I don't believe that Laura is here. She usually tells us about the announcements that are happening at the farm. So if you're in the Houston area, please check out the link. I put the link to the farm in the chat. And if you're in the neighborhood, please stop by. There are many wonderful programs there. If anybody has any knowledge of any upcoming programs this week, please feel free to unmute and let the viewers know about them. Well, if you check out their website or call their phone number, you can find out about what programs are happening this week. I know that they have many wonderful programs that they do. And next week, we will be hearing from Professor Edwin Bryant. He will speak on the glory and mystery of India. I put that in the chat as well. And I put the link for our WhatsApp group. So this way you don't have to miss any of our invite links. And the invite link usually stays the same each week, except for this week we used the Dallas link, which Nityananda Prabhu so graciously shared with us. Thank you so much. And tonight's recording, which I know many of you were asking about because you want to share it with so many, will be available on the YouTube channel that's in the chat as well. And that will be uploaded by the end of the weekend. So I just want to say thank you again to Nityananda Prabhu. Thank you so much for your association and sharing your memories and your experiences with us. We are so grateful and so fortunate to have heard from you.
Thank you so very much, and thank you to Sarvabhauma Prabhu, of course, for inviting me, and also all of you who came on. Thank you also very much.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Manchakapasya kripasindubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhya Vaishnavebhya namo namah. Janant Guri Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Srila Gurudev ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Nityananda Prabhu ki jai.
Hare
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.